So if anyone can be doing behavioral science and any role can be doing behavioral science, how do we figure out where behavioral science generally formally sits within a business? In my idea of a business, there are really three parts to any business or any organization. One is the business model. Now, if you're in a nonprofit organization, you might think of this as the impact model, but really this is the part of the organization that figures out what behaviors do we care about happening. That might be because we care about them for pro-social reasons. It might be because we can monetize them, but who is going to be doing what and how are we going to make money off it is the business for me. That's the business model. Then we have a behavioral model. Now that we know what behaviors we want, how do we make those behaviors happen more often, right? We want people to be doing them. How do we get people to do them? And then there's a third part of the business, which is I think of as the operational model. That's, hey, given that we know how to make that happen, how do we scale that? Now, each of those has an opportunity to innovate. At some point, the subscription was an innovation. No one had ever caused people to subscribe to something before. That was an innovation that happened in the business model part of the business. Or nobody had ever figured out how to monetize people doing some behavior. That can be an innovation. Potential business models, how we monetize or what behaviors we monetize. No one's ever monetized drinking water before, but then, people come along and bottle it and suddenly you can monetize this behavior that is drinking water. Those are business innovations or organizational innovations in that sort of business space. Then there's that behavioral piece, which we're going to talk about throughout this course. How do we actually cause that to happen? How do we get people to subscribe? How do we cause people to carry around these bottles of water? And then we have an operational business. And there's lots of innovation over here in the operational piece. How do we do this at scale? Can we mechanize better? Can we code better? Can we create better software, better things? Tons of innovation happens over here, process improvement. So it's not that, hey, the behavioral science team is the innovation team. Innovation can happen in each of those three parts of the business. We are just working on the innovation that happens in the behavioral part. How do we get people to do things that they wouldn't ordinarily do in the world that exists today? Now, you may notice that this idea of a three-part business maps onto other things that you've seen before. For example, MBAs are often fond of using desirability, feasibility, viability. Viability is just the idea that, hey, we know how to make money from this thing, or it results in impact that we care about. That viability is the business part of the organization we're talking about. Feasibility is the operational bit. Can we actually do this? Desirability is the, what is it we want to actually do? Is this worthwhile? How does it actually change behavior? So this maps onto models that you may know. You don't have to burn down an organization in order to do applied behavioral science. You don't have to forget everything that you knew in order to do behavioral science either. This should work on top of existing models of how you understand the world to help you do it in two important ways. One, we're going to focus on behavior. Two, we're going to use science as a methodology. Understanding the world through a viability, feasibility, desirability lens doesn't mean that you are recognizing that the thing you're trying to do is change behavior, and it doesn't mean that you're using science to do that in a replicable way. So what we're trying to do is layer on top of models that you might already understand in order to help you do something differently. So let's look at some examples of that three-part thinking. Take somebody like Pepsi, right? Pepsi monetizes the behavior that is drinking. Then they have ways to get people to drink more, branding, advertising, all sorts of different things that they do in order to increase the behavior that is drinking. And then they have operational models to scale that across the world, bottling plants and licensing and, all of the intergovernmental things that happen when you produce and ship and all those sorts of things, right? So they have a business model. We know how to monetize drinking through direct sales. They have a behavioral model. How do we get people to drink? And then they have a way of scaling that, some operational way that brings those two together. You can do this for any business. Think about Uber. Uber says, hey, we can monetize people or things getting in the back of cars. Then we have a model that gets people or things to be in the back of cars, Uber Eats or Uber, the sort of direct app. And then we have an operational model, drivers and, sort of regulations and all the other things that actually allow that to occur. Visa. Right? We can monetize when people transact. We can get people to transact more often. And then we have an operational system of interchange and other kinds of things that allow that to occur. You can do this across many, many, many businesses. And the point here is really that every business is a behavior business. I've never found a business in the 20 years that I've been doing this that I couldn't see, hey, here's how they're a behavioral business at the root of things.